Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. vsin, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested in your idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now. InventHelp keeps your idea confidential and explains every step of the invention process. We create professional materials representing your idea and submit it to companies who are looking for new ideas. We have more than 9,000 companies who've agreed to review ideas in confidence. If a company shows interest in manufacturing your invention, we can negotiate on your behalf. We have helped over 10,000 clients receive patents. We also offer services including 3D modeling and animation demonstrating your idea, prototyping services, and we use state-of-the-art technology to show InventHelp client ideas to additional companies. Join the thousands of people just like you who chose InventHelp to pursue their idea. We are experienced. We are working for you. We are InventHelp.
Call us for free information at 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back to Racers Odds, everybody. I'm John Roberts with Jeff Cuyandro and Jeff Hammond at the racetrack today. We are getting you ready for one of NASCAR's crown jewels, and this is your number one source for statistics and information as you try to make the best wager on NASCAR's Cup Series as we head into the playoffs. Now, we're available on a number of different formats, NASCAR.com, PRN, VSiN, YouTube, just to name a few, and hoping for many more. And once again, we are glad you're along for the ride with us here today. Now, there is light rain in the area of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as we speak. Take that into consideration when you're looking at long shot drivers. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to make it up through the field. And also the race time has been moved up roughly 15 minutes to 2:05 Eastern time. That's when the green flag will wave. And of course, as always, we have the countdown clock on our screen for you as we'll also scroll through some of the favorites odds for drivers to win this particular race. Now, for the first time ever, in a Cup Series race in NASCAR, qualifying has been held the same day as racing. It's never happened before, and it's certainly given this one a different look. So we are about to dive headlong into matchups. This time around, it seems where that's a great bit of value involved in some of these matchups. So let's get you back out to the racetrack right now and ask Jeff Hammond. Jeff, what intrigues you?
Well, guys, early in the week when I got the matchups, I started looking at it, especially the head-to-head matchups, and I saw some things that kind of were interesting and some things that made me kind of scratch my head. When I saw that the fact that Kyle Busch was such a underdog, I say, to Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin, as good as he's been as of lately, the separation between these two guys, I know how good Kyle is at this racetrack, but it's almost like they're not respecting Denny Hamlin. And automatically I said, man, I got to go with Denny Hamlin because it's an opportunity to make some really good money. And I know that a lot of times these odds are going to change and be moving around, but just the overall matchup of two teammates that have exceptional records and are extremely good here in Indianapolis, that much separation made me kind of scratch my head. Looking further down, another one that kind of made me wonder was Martin Truex Jr. and his teammate, Eric Jones. The thing that they're giving a lot of even money there, but when you look at the numbers, here Eric Jones has finished second at this racetrack a year ago, coming off a win from Darlington, and Martin Truex Jr., when you look at the numbers overall, he's not very good at this racetrack. So you think, well, how can that be even money right now? This guy, Eric Jones, should be a clear-cut, favorite, at least over his teammates. So, or somebody should have a little bit better, what would you call it, swagger or separation between the two. Moving on into matchup number two, the one that I do like happens to be, once again, teammates versus teammates. There's been a lot of teammate matchups in this week for whatever reason. It's Joey Logano versus Brad Keselowski. Again, they actually have Joey favored over last year's winner, Brad Keselowski. So I'm sitting there thinking, if those numbers stay like that, I've got to get me some Brad Keselowski. And that's just in Group C. Moving into matchup number 3. Here again, Kurt Busch versus Chase Elliott. They've got even money on it early part of the week. But how can that be? Kurt Busch is a much better racer when it comes to Indianapolis. And so far during these practice sessions, he has been extremely fast and not only getting ready to qualify, but in some long runs, he's shown that number 1 car in Ganassi Racing. Love them some Indianapolis. Guys?
Yeah, Jeff, thanks a lot. I think just about everybody loves some Indianapolis, especially if they're the ones that are kissing the bricks. You know how happy you are after you win a race if you're putting your mouth on something with a bunch of burnt up rubber and oil and gasoline. You must be really, really happy after that happens. The tradition of kissing the bricks, of course. So, Jeff C., let's take a look at some of these matchups. In our first group of matchups, I find a couple really intriguing. First of all, like Hammond said, the Kyle Busch-Denny Hamlin one is very intriguing, again, because of qualifying. But the one I'm really looking at right now is Eric Jones as an underdog to Denny Hamlin, with the fact, like Jeff just pointed out, Eric Jones winning the other crown jewel last week, and also with what he did here last year.
Yeah, Eric Jones, like Steve was saying, if you want to take a look at Pocono as sort of a reference point, you've got Eric Jones, who finished 2nd and 3rd in both Pocono races this year. Additionally, he's coming off a win last week. Right now, they are both at minus 110. That's Eric Jones and Denny Hamlin. So essentially, it's a neutral matchup, but you've got Eric Jones starting 14th, while Denny Hamlin will be starting at the rear of the field.
And once again, to clarify, you would have to throw down $1.10 to make a buck. Is that correct? On the
that is, yes, that is correct.
It's an easy way to put that. So, again, I really like those two matchups right there. The one I think that's really difficult to go for is Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. That's such a toss up to me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a very tight matchup. We've seen Kyle Busch. He's had such great past success. But interestingly, in his last 2 Indianapolis starts, he's minus 42 positions from qualifying to finishing position. You've got Kevin Harvick, who's going to be on the pole as an underdog at plus 110.
Yeah, again, that's a difficult one to look at, but I think there's a couple of ones on there that have great value as well. So, Jeff, let me put you on the spot. When you look at our matchups in number 1, what's your favorite, if you do have a favorite?
Well, it's a very, very tough sell, John, but I think if I have to look at it, I'm probably looking at Eric Jones at minus 110 over Denny Hamlin. And really, the reason is almost by default is because we've got several heavy favorites. We've got Kyle Busch as a minus 200. We've got Kevin Harvick as a minus 170 over Denny Hamlin. So there's a lot of big numbers to lay, where I'm going to go back to more of a neutral matchup with Jones and Hamlin.
Okay, another thing to take into consideration here, we know desire doesn't necessarily make your car go faster, but with Kyle Busch being the odds-on favorite to win the race, there's also one little nugget to throw in there. So far this season, Joe Gibbs Racing has won the first 3 crown jewels with 3 different drivers. Of course, Denny Hamlin with the Daytona 500, Martin Truex Jr. with the Coke 600, and just last week, Eric Jones won that Southern 500. The only Joe Gibbs Racing driver right now that does not have one of those crown jewel victories this season is Kyle Busch. And also, he is great when he has the potential to sweep the weekend, and he also won. Now, it wouldn't be a huge payoff, but Jeff C., what do you see in a winner or in a matchup as Kyle Busch? Are you looking hard at him?
Well, I think you have to. The way he performed yesterday in the Xfinity race, and just the way we know how strong Gibbs has been all year. So it really doesn't surprise me to see him as the deserving favorite. Kevin Harvick is certainly one that we have to look at as well. But I think that Kyle Busch is well placed right where he is at plus 350.
So let's move on now to our second group of head-to-head driver matchups where we see some of the favorites as well up here. And, of course, last year's winner, Brad Keselowski, comes into consideration here as well. Now, Brad Keselowski is going to start in the 6th position right in front of Kyle Busch and right behind Jimmy Johnson. His teammate Joey Logano qualified 4th earlier today, and these are some of the guys involved in these matchups. Jeff, does anybody stick out to you right away? Any one of these matchups or any one driver favorite?
Very difficult. I think I would go back to Eric Jones as a big underdog to Brad Keselowski at plus 140. They're starting relatively in the same neighborhood with 8 spots between the two of them, but I just like the way Jones is running recently, and I have a hunch when it's all said and done that these Gibbs cars are going to be awfully difficult to beat today.
Okay, there's no question about that because they've been difficult to beat all year long, and it seems like they're peaking at the right time. And then again, it's going to be really intriguing to look at what Denny Hamlin can do because he's starting at the back of the pack. He's made that pay off, but we've got a cool racetrack. We've got a very difficult racetrack to come through the field on. So let's move on now to our third set of head-to-head driver matchups where you have some long shots to win in these. You also have some guys who have qualified a little bit farther back in the field. Now, Paul Menard, Matt DiBenedetto, that's an interesting one because of the way Matt DiBenedetto has been racing lately. But Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch is very good at this racetrack, and he finds himself starting Jeff up there in the 8th position. So he's up front, and drivers at Indy that start up front tend to stay there.
You know, Kurt Busch was the fastest driver in Happy Hour over 5 consecutive laps and 10 consecutive laps. He has a 16-spot starting advantage over Chase Elliott. And, you know, as Hammond said earlier, they looked great when they were both minus 110. But unfortunately, the odds makers have caught up to us, and now Kurt Busch is a massive minus 220 favorite.
So we see Daniel Suarez involved, Jeff, in several of these different matchups right here. Minus 110, minus 150 to Ryan Newman. That's the guy he happens to be in a tie with right now for that final playoff spot. He wins the tiebreaker to get in there. But let's hear what Daniel Suarez had to say about going into this weekend and what's on his mind as he tries to take that last playoff spot.
You know, there is obviously the point situation and the bubble and the playoff drivers and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, we have to control what we can control. I cannot control where Newman finished. I cannot control where Boyer or Johnson finish. That's something I can't control. The only thing I can control is myself. And I have to try to put myself in the best position in the racetrack for stage points and finishing the race in a good position. So we can make it, you know, but I cannot control, you know, their result. I cannot go out there to wreck all 3 of them to make sure I'm going to be fine. You know, that's not how it works.
So starting in the 22nd spot, no, 20th for, hold on. I have to look at that. Ryan Newman is starting in the 22nd spot. Daniel Suarez is starting in the 20th spot. So as Jimmy Johnson told us earlier, you're probably not going to win this race from back there. So if anybody is looking at Daniel Suarez, Jeff, I think you'd look at putting money on him as winning one of these matchups along here because he has incentive and also the ability in the car to get past some of these other drivers, but not from 20th to 1st.
Right. You know, the thing with these drivers that are really on the cusp of making the playoffs, I think that there's really sort of a managerial fear amongst the way they're going to run the race. And when you look at Suarez against William Byron, he's a plus 130 underdog. He has a better starting spot, and you know he's going to do whatever he can to really push forward and just have the best points day that he can. So there could be value on Suarez as an underdog in that matchup.
So also one of the matchups that we've definitely been looking at throughout the day here and really throughout the week when they first came out, Ryan Newman, Jeff, he averages a top 10 finish, and he's run every Indianapolis race since 2002. So when you talk about average finishes among some drivers, well, they've only been out there for just a few of these races. Ryan Newman has this top 10 average and a win. So when you look at his record, when you look at what's on the line, plus 120, Ryan Newman with Daniel Suarez, that particularly intrigues me.
I would have to agree with you. You look at Newman, and he's consistently outperformed his qualifying positions. And I think as an underdog, you've got to really like him going into this regular season finale.
So, guys, if we can, let's recap some of our head-to-head driver matchups that we really like here. The first one, I felt Jeff Cuyandro is Denny Hamlin and Eric Jones. That matchup in the first one, I think that is a very intriguing and something you get a lot of value out of.
I think you can. I think we've got to be careful, though, because Hamlin is just so adept at coming from the rear. There's a little bit of question that he's going to a backup car, and he did struggle last week. Is the tide turning for Denny Hamlin? Did he perhaps peak a little bit early and is now about to hit maybe a streak of some negative luck, if you will? So very tight matchup right there. Yeah,
and I think also in our second set of matchups that we had, Jeff, there was really nothing there that I think we should go anywhere near, and I think you agreed with me on that.
I would have to agree. It's a very difficult matchup day with these big prices.
And then matchups number 3, that third one, we just talked about that just a second ago, that Daniel Suarez-Newman matchup. That's intriguing, and that's one, I think, out of that, perhaps Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch. But if you did, once again, Jeff, putting you on the spot there, if you did go for one of these matchups, where do you think you would go?
I think I would probably land on Ryan Newman at plus 110 over Daniel Suarez. We've seen Newman be very successful in his recent matchups. And like I said, he's just been outperforming when it comes to qualifying versus race.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. So there are not a ton of intriguing matchups this time around, not a ton of value, but the few that are there that we feel have value have a lot of value. I think they're set up very good, especially with this odd day of qualifying on the day of racing. First time that has ever happened. As of right now, up in Indianapolis, the rain seems to be moving away. It looks very good, but once again, the start time has been moved up because of impending weather in the area. Remember, these days it used to be halfway in a race before it was called official. Nowadays, with the 3 segments, a race can be official after just the first 2 segments are completed. So you got to do a little bit more racing to get there these days, to get to a complete race. So that's something to consider when you have a driver that you may be looking at starting in the back of the pack. Starting position may just mean a little bit more this time around because of qualifying today and also because of the impending weather. So let us take a quick break here on Racers Odds. Want to thank everybody for being with us across all the platforms, PRN, VSiN, NASCAR.com. This is one of those crown jewel races, and we're going to talk here in a moment of some pretty good value in some of the group matchups. Often we go into a race and we look at the group matchups. There's not a lot there. This time around, there may well be. So stay with us. We'll be back with more Racers Odds in just a moment.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Gone Racing.
There's still wheel to wheel.
The weekly NASCAR show that gets you ready for this week's big race and more.
Oh, yeah!
Take a ride with us to Victory Lane on Gone Racing.
We just got these lines last night. Was plus 700 on Brad Keselowski. He's already down to plus 550, so I think we know where the money is.
It's going that way.
And that's where my money would have been, too.
Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, Channel 204, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Great job.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we could promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Call On Call Pharmacy right now and save as much as $700. 800-884-7919. On Call Pharmacy delivers the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Call On Call Pharmacy now and take advantage of this special offer. 800-884-7919. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody. 2 weeks in a row, we have had racing's crown jewels for us on a Saturday evening or Sunday evening or a Sunday. We had the Southern 500 and now, of course, the Brickyard 400. This time around, both, though, have been plagued by a little bit of rain. If you remember last weekend, the race started and ended very late. It took a while for us to find out that Eric Jones was the actual winner of that particular crown jewel race. But right now, it appears as if the weather is cooperating with us well out there in Indy. So let's check back in with Jeff Hammond for the latest from the racetrack. Jeff?
Well, guys, things are still looking good here in Indianapolis so far, and real excited. Once again, it's so cool up here. It should be a fast racetrack. But when you start looking at some of these group matches, a little bit like I felt like the head-to-head, some of them I look at like A and B, groups A and B, not a whole lot of attention for Jeff Hammond. But when I get to Group C, Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, and Clint Boyer, I see what I consider a clear favorite, and it has to be Kurt Busch. Once again, that Chip Ganassi organization has been fast since they've unloaded off the truck. These other guys, Ryan, Chase, and Clint, they've been good, but they haven't shown the speed or the fact that they have not made enough long runs, 10-lap averages. Some of these guys went 15 laps to see exactly where their cars were and where they start falling off. And this group right here, Group C, I really like Kurt Busch over these other competitors. Moving a little bit deeper in the field, Group D, I don't see anybody in that group as far as William Byron, Daniel Suarez, Eric Almirola, or Jimmy Johnson that they get excited about. But right below that, Group E, this is one I feel like that a lot of people may be overlooking, and that includes Matt DiBenedetto, Paul Menard, Chris Buescher, and Austin Dillon. The guy that's got my attention has to be Paul Menard. Been good in practice, former winner here, and I feel like his experience, and you got to understand something here. The way I look at it, Paul Menard feels very comfortable here because his father, they've been coming to Indianapolis for years, being a part of the Indy 500. So for Paul, this is almost like a home away from home. So I really believe if you want to make a little bit of a wager here, Group E, put your money on Paul Menard. I feel like he can take down the other three competitors. Guys?
Yeah, I would imagine, Hammond, that Paul Menard is betting up a little bit right now because of the qualifying run. But also, let's consider, first of all, he won this race back in 2011. That, of course, with a Richard Childress racing car, but he still has a Penske car this time underneath of him. So starting up front like that. And he also last year finished 9th in the race, too. So he got a top 10 just last year with the same group. So that is an interesting grouping to look at, D. I also, Jeff Cuyandro, I also like what Hammond said about Group C as well. I figured that is one that's very good also. But Group A, when you look at those top-tier drivers, that's a group that comes out every week where you have 4 of the best drivers and 4 of the best qualifiers. You look at that and you think, wow, man, that's a hard one to go after.
It sure is. You know, when you look at Kyle Busch, he's the favorite at plus 180. He's led 282 laps in the last 5 races at Indianapolis, which is the most of any driver. And you look back just a little bit further and you have Kevin Harvick as the second favorite at plus 200. He has an average finish of 5.4, which is the best of any driver in the last 5 races at Indy. So that Group A is rather top heavy, with Hamlin starting in the rear and really Truex not showing up too strongly so far this weekend.
Group B is the same way. I feel you have a lot of very similar drivers there. And, of course, Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano were your 1-2 finishers. Kyle Larson had a great run at Darlington. And, of course, Eric Jones has so much momentum on his side after winning one of the Crown Jewel races. And for a driver who hasn't raced much at Indy, his record speaks for itself there. He does well at this track. So I think, again, Jeff, this is a dangerous group. This one's really hard to pick.
I think this is the most competitive group of any of them. Like you said, you have Eric Jones, who's been so hot, and you've got Brad Keselowski, who's looked great so far this weekend, but you're really paying the price at plus 180. If I had to look at anybody in this group, I think I would bypass the three favorites and go to the long shot with Kyle Larson at plus 345. I just like those odds for somebody who's been running very well recently.
We'll also have to agree with Mr. Hammond on the C grouping with some of those drivers there. Now, this you can take this for what it's worth. Kurt Busch was the 2014. He was the Rookie of the Year in the Indianapolis 500 as he got him a 6th place finish in the IndyCar. Now that's IndyCar, yes, and that's not stock car racing. That's not NASCAR, but nonetheless, it just shows you he has a feel for this racetrack. And also, Kurt Busch is just plain Kurt Busch, Jeff, for lack of a better way to put that.
No, he definitely is, John. And when you look at the progression of this group throughout the course of the weekend, Kurt Busch really stands out as he was the fastest in both 5 and 10 consecutive laps in happy hour. But you're really paying a premium at plus 160. I think if I had to look anywhere here, it would be Ryan Blaney at 3-1 to win Group C.
Yeah, because therefore that would be the better payout, correct? And when you look at these groupings, that's the place where you have to be right on here to get any real payout out of it. You have to get a driver that's got a little bit more numbers on his side.
Yeah, very difficult to win these group matchups, especially if you're betting on a favorite, because so many things can happen, and we see these fields just become topsy-turvy when they hit pit row. So much can happen. Very difficult to bet on favorites and consistently turn a profit in group matchups.
So if we had to, Jeff, and this is something I've looked at here throughout the week, if we had, this is even before qualifying, but now when you look at qualifying and then you look at Group D, I feel like Jimmy Johnson at plus 285 there. If I had to go for something, this might be one, Johnson plus 285 with what he has on the line and where he's qualified against these other drivers.
Yeah, well, you're right, John, but we've actually seen Johnson be bet down to plus 205, so he's now the favorite of Group D. I think when you look at this group, you sort of have Suarez and Johnson, kind of chasing stage points and chasing one another. I like the way Eric Almirola has looked so far this weekend at plus 335. He's one of the long shots on the board. I know recently he hasn't been all that strong, but I think that Stuart Haas has something this weekend, and I like the way he looks at a big number.
So out of the so-called bubble boys, we have Clint Bowyer as the driver that's in the best position. It's not a great position, but he is on the inside looking out right now as opposed to some of those other drivers. If you take Paul Menard out of that question, it's Bowyer who has the best starting position of these so-called bubble drivers. So let's check in with Clint, see what he had to say to the media earlier.
Pocono is always a good, testing ground, proving ground for what you'll see at Indy. We were pretty decent there on speed-wise and things like that, but you're talking the same tire and same situations. Speed and everything else. Qualifying, I feel like I'm fairly confident we'll be fine there. It's the things you can't control. That untimely caution and something like that. I mean, that's the difference in being in the situation we're in. They could bite you. That's the reality of it. But you go out there and control the things you can control, make the car as fast as possible. Try to qualify up front. Keep it in track position, stay in front of those guys, and that's the only thing you can control, really. Anything else above and beyond that, if it's a unlucky situation, untimely caution, something like that, so be it.
Yeah, so there's a lot you can't control. There's some things you can control. You certainly can control what happens on pit road. That's got to be spot on for all these bubble drivers. They could lose a great deal of positions there. The stage breakups are a little bit different this time around. It's a shorter first stage and a much longer second and third stage. We don't normally see that. Stage points are huge when it comes to the bubble drivers as well. But let's quickly, Jeff, look at some of our long shot groups here and who we have involved with them. Again, we talked about the Group E, with Matt DiBenedetto and Paul Menard being your interesting drivers in this one.
Yeah, I think when you look at Group E, Matt DiBenedetto has just been a stellar group driver ever since it was announced that he was losing his seat for next year. So although Paul Menard has a great starting spot, starting second, I still like Matty D to win Group E at plus 260.
Really? Okay,
I do.
great. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. You very rarely lead us astray, too, so we'll be watching that one for sure. But also, we do have to mention that Chris Buescher, although it would be quite a long shot, he's got to win, but he is another one of those drivers right now that is close enough in points that a win would get him into the playoffs. It would be somewhat of a miracle if it did happen, but nonetheless, that is still a possible, but perhaps long shot, way long shot scenario. Our Group F features some more long shot drivers, but somebody, if you look at the drivers in the group, there may be some value here, Jeff, if you feel like you can pick the guy out of the group that's going to outrace the other three, McDowell, Darrell Wallace, Bubba, and David Reagan, Ty Dillon. Is there anything you like out of those four?
This is an interesting matchup, an interesting group, rather. These drivers have all been about the same in terms of odds to win their respective groups for the last several weeks. However, we heard this week that Darrell Wallace is by far and away the happiest he's been with his car the entire season. He was 12th in 10 consecutive laps in happy hour, but it's going to pay a big premium at plus 170 to win this group. I like the way he looks. I think he very easily can win this group, but at plus 170, that's a little short of a price.
Overall, Jeff, any group here you like, or is this another one of those weeks where we probably would say best to stay away from groups?
Well, I think considering, the way qualifying is in the same it's a couple-hour time frame as the race, we have possible rain. This is probably more of a stay-away race weekend.
Yeah, just too difficult to figure out who's going to outrace three other drivers. And also, again, there's going to be quite a sense of urgency as the start time has been moved up for this race today because of impending weather in the area. When we look at the weather radar, it looks pretty good right now, but it is still summertime in that part of the country. It can change in a hurry, but you see a lot of that stuff is south of the Speedway right now, which looks good. A little stuff creeping off to the west right there, but that is, again, why NASCAR has chosen to move up the start time. There's a limit to what you can do in terms of TV windows and things like that. So NASCAR doesn't have the power, the ability to move the race up too much further, but their goal is to get the complete race in, especially when it's one of these crown jewels. You don't want to cut it short, and there's going to be a lot of fans out there hoping for a lot from this race, and we're going to see some interesting things along the way. You can bet on that for sure. So we'll take a quick break here on Racers Odds. When we come back, little roundtable discussion about what we like today and what we think we're going to see on the racetrack and where the true value is when it comes to wagering on NASCAR's Cup Series. Stay with us. We'll be back with more Racers Odds in just a moment.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the world. You've heard ads from other companies offering to help taxpayers only if they owe over $10,000. Here at Platinum Tax Defenders, we're A-plus rated with the Better Business Bureau, and we're proud to be one of the only tax firms in the country who understands that people who owe less than $10,000 need help just as badly. The IRS doesn't care how much money you owe. They'll still garnish your wages and even seize your assets. So whether you owe just a few $1,000s or hundreds of thousands, call now for your free tax consultation. If you qualify, we may even be able to reduce your tax debt down to a small fraction of what you owe. So don't wait until the IRS seizes your property and garnishes your wages. Call 800-856-1330 and get your tax problem resolved once and for all. That number again is 800-856-1330. 800-856-1330.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
And welcome back once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. We are your number one source for statistics and information to give you what you need to go out and wager on NASCAR's top series. This week, we are at the famed Brickyard, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it is one of those crown jewel races, but there's so much different in each year in racing. This time around, there's a ton different when it comes to setting the field of 16 and also when it comes to handicapping such a big race, because in years past, that final race has been under the lights at Richmond International Raceway in Virginia. This time around, this final race is coming to you from the famed Brickyard, a huge racetrack at 2.5 miles, and also just a different beast when it comes to racing it and trying to figure out what happens. So, of course, Jeff Caliandro, when you go to handicap, you look at what has happened in the past. But in the past, Indy's been completely different. The playoff schedule has been completely different in terms of what races lead up and what determines who's going to run. So this time around, I'd imagine this year in handicapping terms has been quite a lot different.
Yeah, this year has been different for so many reasons, John. You have the schedule changes, you have the new race packages. There's been so much to sort of adapt to week by week as we've gone through the season. But, in the end, we're going to look at weekend performance progression from unload to race time, and we're going to take it week by week, and we're going to find the best drivers that we can. So while it is different because of the variables that have been introduced to us this season, all in all, it just comes back to handicapping and looking for the best values.
But they're still going to try to make it hard on you, Jeff. Next year, it's going to be Daytona that's going to be the cutoff race. Yeah, and that one is just is one of those low-grade handicapability racetracks. We don't know what's going to win. I mean, who's going to win? Ask Justin Haley.
Yeah, you're exactly right. What we do know about Daytona is that we typically see longer odds show up in victory lane. So as you can imagine, next year, with it being the end of the regular season and the fact that it's Daytona, boy, anything can happen. So excitement abound in the NASCAR series right now.
Yeah, and just think, we still got 10 more this year. Almost, better than 3 months of racing to determine the champion. So let's check back in with a good friend, Jeff Hammond, who is at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Jeff, what's the word?
Well, gentlemen, believe it or not, everybody is talking about Kyle Busch. Can he go ahead and go and sweep the weekend? There's a lot of folks down there right now that believe they can upset the apple cart and prevent Joe Gibbs Racing and that juggernaut that they just kind of keep chugging along after having such a successful regular season. There are a lot of people who want to basically dethrone them and show them that going into the playoffs, they're not the only car you got to consider. And that happens to include the likes of Kevin Harvick. Also, you think about the other Stewart-Haas cars that are involved in today's race along with Eric Almirola. He feels like he's honestly got a shot of challenging today. But the thing I want to bring to your attention is the race within the race. The fact that we do not have a complete playoff field yet. We've got 4 drivers: Ryan Newman, Clint Bowyer, Jimmy Johnson, as well as Daniel Suarez. These 4 guys are going to basically be going at each other like never before. Today's qualifying is going to be very important if they don't qualify up front, because track position. You will hear a lot about track position today, because if you can get up front and stay up front, you have a legitimate shot of having a great day here at Indianapolis, and that means finishing in the top 5. Also, your pit road. There's going to be a lot of times you're going to have to depend on your pit crew to come down and be flawless. Today, you've got to be that way. If not, you're not going to wind up doing very well because, again, it's going to be a very challenging racetrack to pass on. We're going to see some passing. We're going to see probably the best race ever when it comes to Indianapolis. But still, track position and being up front is going to be the key. This new aero package that they have brought in here with the 550 horsepower and all this downforce should lend itself to better passing as far as the draft is concerned, but it's still going to be a challenge. You got to get some help. Today, we're going to see a race like we've never seen before at Indianapolis, but don't forget, we've got 4 drivers that are going to have to be vying for that final 2 positions to transfer into the playoffs, and that's going to mean as much as winning the Indy 400.
All right, so that again is one of the wrenches that's thrown in this time around. It's more difficult to handicap when things aren't exactly as the way they've been in the past. And Jeff, I don't want to take anything away from competition in other sports, but I think when you go out, you got 11 dudes and 22 dudes on the field, 11 against 11. I think you got a pretty good idea in the NFL what could happen. But take this, for instance, when it comes to wagering on NASCAR. At the racetrack during qualifying and practice and with past records, last weekend we were all looking very closely at Denny Hamlin, except you told us to watch out for Eric Jones. I'll put that I'll put that out there. But Denny Hamlin just seemed to be the odds-on favorite. But things throughout the race can change so much. There's so many other factors. So this time around, here we are going in when everybody is saying pretty much Kyle Busch has that car to beat. So then that lanes the question, when he does become the odds-on favorite, even though he is, there are things that can beat Kyle Busch, like Kyle Busch.
Oh, without question. You know, you look at Kyle Busch at plus 350. Those are awfully short odds to assume that he's going to beat the rest of these competitors that are so strong. You know, and you look at this race the way it sort of stacks up. You've got 3 drivers that are 5-1 or less between Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Brad Keselowski. Then the next jump is to Joey Logano at double digits at 10-1. So there's really a sort of have versus have-nots in this race, according to the odds makers. But those odds are just, in my opinion, while Kyle Busch deserves to be the favorite, plus 350 is just too short.
Yeah, it sure is, Jeff, when you consider some of the the other competitors out there, that what they're basically saying by putting Kyle at those odds, they're putting him, the odds makers are, as a big favorite. They're really forecasting a Kyle Busch win when you see odds that short.
Yeah, without question, they are. You know, the other thing I just want to touch on is when you talk about a driver like Kyle Busch, there's a certain amount of name recognition that goes along with his odds. There is always going to be bets placed on Kyle Busch because he is, you know, quite frankly, one of the best drivers on the circuit. So while his true odds might be closer to 5.5-1, they can get away with putting him at plus 350 because they have guaranteed action coming in on him.
So if you do have a favorite driver and you want to get some value out of long shots, that brings us back once again to odds to win the race. Let's take a look at those. We've had them scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the program here, and you will notice once again 24 minutes until the green flag that has been moved up because of impending weather in the area. But what hasn't changed all that much, Jeff, even though we have had qualifying today and Kevin Harvick is on the pole, Brad Keselowski is last year's winner. Joey Logano is last year's runner-up driver. But Kyle Busch still is ahead of all those drivers. I think what is kind of interesting is on this list, you do see Eric Jones. You do not see Paul Menard. You see a Ryan Blaney, and you also see a Jimmy Johnson at 25-1. And strangely enough, if you go back in the field, you see Ryan Newman as well, a little bit farther back than I would imagine at 200-1. His teammate Ricky Stenhouse in front of him, there's Paul Menard at 80-1.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of drivers here that are showing flashes of being able to move up, but maybe just up into the top 10 and not into the top 5 or even top 3 or to contend for a win. At the end of the day, the cream really rises to the top. And that's why you're seeing such top-heavy favorites. I think if you're looking outside those top 3, I think, you know, you have to look at someone like Joey Logano, who's had 3 top 5s in his last 5 Indianapolis starts, and he'll be starting 4th. So he puts himself in a good situation, from a total perspective entering the race.
And odds makers are no fools, Jeff. When we look at these things, there's rhyme and reason behind it. Who would have wagered on Justin Haley to win the July Daytona race? But that is what happened. So when you look at some of these huge long shots and also the field bet, I think when you look at those odds, it's very rare that we see that. Throughout this season, our 10 different winners that we have, they've basically been among those favorites, among those guys you usually see win, and therefore we see them at odds like they are right now, like they are some of the top dogs at some of the short odds.
Right, and when you talk about Justin Haley, I believe he's the first driver to win a race that was not a matchup driver in 2.5 years.
Wow.
So typically when you look at drivers who win the race, they're drivers who were involved in head-to-head matchups.
And again, that puts us right back where we were before. When you are going for the value in betting, it tends to be in those head-to-head matchups. It's one driver who has to beat another. You have enough information, but when it goes to actually who's going to win these races, man, that's difficult to do, and it's even more difficult to handicap.
It sure is. So many things can happen, and you know that these drivers are going to be relying heavily on their pit conditions, staying up, getting up front, staying up front, and trying to make up all the ground they can on these restarts. That leads to a lot of dicey situations. So when you have that sort of storm, if you will, it makes betting on a heavy favorite all that more difficult with the variables that can come into play.
Now, when we get this final 60, there's only one spot to be determined, and there are 4 drivers basically going for it. If you want to throw in the long shots, technically there are 6 if you include Paul Menard and Chris Buescher as well. But we'll get a much clearer picture when we have those 16 drivers set and how they are seeded. Now, Kyle Busch was your regular season champion, so no doubt he should be the odds-on favorite right now. He has the biggest advantage going in. Jeff, there were times in the past, and just not too many years ago, where your regular season champion got absolutely nothing. No advantage whatsoever. Now, throughout the year, you win a stage at Daytona in the first race of the season. That could help you win the championship, and that brings us to these kind of odds right now.
Yeah, we really see those points earned for stage wins coming in to be very valuable this time of year. And, Kyle Busch, due to the fact that he's won stages and won races, he is deserving at plus 350. But, I think when you look a little bit deeper, we also know that Kyle Busch has sometimes been his own worst enemy. So I think there's plenty of room to look down the odds board when it comes to an eventual champion.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, Jeff, because if you look at plus 350, that's all you're going to garner from a Kyle Busch championship. And no matter if you're Kyle Busch or whoever, this is a very, very difficult thing to do. You got to survive all the elimination. Then you got to make it into the championship 4. Then you have to defeat 3 other drivers head-to-head. That's going to be a tough group to pick once we get to the final race of the season. So we got to grab another quick break here. The covers are off of the race cars in Indianapolis. It looks like we are ready for an on-time start. That, of course, less than 20 minutes away. We're going to get Jeff Hammond back in with us. We're going to have our picks of the week, the matchups or the odds-on favorites that we're looking at as one of your better value bets. So stick with us, everybody. We got much more Racers Odds coming your way in just a moment.
Hi, this is Doug Rice for the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Before the pros tee off for this week's golf tournament, the VSiN experts help you make the cut on long shots.
When I profiled all the players for this tournament, I said Schauffele's number 1 on my board. I like the odds, 25-1. Let's go ahead and play X.
Brady Cannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds are your weekly betting caddies and help you cash those tickets.
Don't be afraid to maybe take some longer odd guys.
Don't miss Long Shots, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, the only golf betting show you need. Exclusively on Sirius XM Channel 204.
Jake was in big trouble with the IRS. He owed how much?
$92,000.
$10,000.
Ouch. The IRS left no room for Jake to breathe.
They put a lien on my house, took all the money out of my bank account, took money out of my paychecks. So it was a nightmare.
He needed help fast.
I figured that all these companies were the same until I called Federal Tax Management. You could just tell they knew what they were talking about. Right then and there, I felt like I had some hope.
Stop the liens, levies, and garnishments fast and qualify for one of several special IRS programs that could reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. So, how'd it go for Jake?
They did what they said they would do. They came through for me. I ended up saving an unbelievable amount. I was so jazzed. I was extremely happy.
If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes, take Jake's advice.
Give Federal Tax Management a phone call. If they help me, they can help anybody.
Call the Federal Tax Management Hotline now. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody. We are edging closer and closer to the green flag, which has been moved up because of weather in one of NASCAR's 4 crown jewel races. That, of course, is the Brickyard 400 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Much more on the line this time around. Not only did we qualify and race on the same day for the first time ever, but also this is the race where we will know for sure what 16 drivers are going to run for the championship. So a lot to take into consideration when you look at the wagers available in terms of where the sharp money is, looking at matchups and single guys to win the race, and also these group matchups as well. So this is the part of the show where we pick our best bets, the ones we're really looking at as high value. And for that, we're going to start out with Jeff Hammond. Jeff, who's your winner?
Well, John and Jeff, the thing is, I'm going to stick with Kevin Harvick. I really feel like that, he is peaking at the right time. The last couple races, I have seen this 4-car, be very competitive. They've done a great job. Rodney Childers has been able to make the right adjustments. I feel like this particular race here at the Brickyard has been high on their radar screen since last year. They come in here with a new hot rod. Car looked good during all the practices. May not be showing some of the speed that you used to, but you got to realize it's not starting up front, but being up front at the end of the day. And I think they feel like they've got a car that can get it done. In closing, racetrack's going to be fast. It's all going to depend on some strategy and being in the right place at the right time. So make sure you pay attention to that, because with the stages being 50-50 and the last run will be 60 to complete this 400-miler here at Indianapolis, that strategy is going to be also something that's going to be worth keeping up with and understanding how that is going to affect the outcome today. I also want to point out, we may be watching history today. If Jimmy Johnson is not able to get and overcome those 18 points to make his way into the playoffs, it'll be the first time in his history that he's not been around in the playoffs. And you don't think that Hendrick Motorsports has not been putting basically all hands on deck. They've been working tirelessly at the shop. But more importantly, down in the garage area, Jeff Gordon, 5-time winner here at Indianapolis, has also been in the garage area, lending whatever kind of assistance and whatever kind of thought process to be able to help these guys make sure they have the fastest and the most, best prepared race car they've ever had here at Indy. And that's speaking pretty much, I guess you'd say, from winner to winner. We're talking about 2 guys that have won 9 races here at Indianapolis, but they both understand the urgency at hand. Guys, this is going to be a whale of a race with a lot of stories within the story, all trying to get to kiss the bricks here at Indy.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Somebody's going to be kissing those bricks when this whole thing is over, and it could well be Jimmy Johnson. That's another thing to look at 25-1. That's fairly decent odds when it comes to a guy who really could win this thing. Will he? That is another question. So, Jeff C., what do you like? What's your best pick of this week?
Well, John, normally we rest ourselves on our head-to-head matchups. This week really doesn't provide much value, just from the factor of the tight schedule with qualifying being the same day. We don't really get to analyze and find our best lines as much as we'd like to. I do agree with Jeff Hammond. I think Kevin Harvick is going to be awfully tough to beat. If I were going to go deeper down the list, I think the driver I would land on is Ryan Blaney at 30-1. I just like the way he looks. I like the way Penske looks going into this race. He's starting in the 9th spot, and I think that number at 30-1 does provide at least marginal value on a long shot winner.
Interesting. Very interesting. So Jeff C. is going with the long shot of Ryan Blaney. Jeff Hammond likes Kevin Harvick as a winner, and I'm still going to stick with the head-to-head matchups, though, this time around. I feel as if this won't be the race where Denny Hamlin works his way up through the field and pulls off a miracle. But the starting position of Eric Jones and the role he has been on lately, he had a career-long stretch of top 10 finishes earlier in the year, but then again, so did Denny. Again, this is going back not only to average finish or odds to win, but I just like this bet of the week. It got bet down to even money. I liked it earlier where it was a lot better, but I just don't believe that this is going to be the time where Denny Hamlin and the racetrack, because of the cool conditions, it's going to be very difficult to come through this pack. So those are the ones we like. Hammond likes Kevin Harvick to win. And Jeff, you like the long shot. Do you normally go for any long shots, or is this one that is just sticking out to you?
Normally, John, we sort of shy away from betting on race winners just because the takeout on behalf of the sports books is so large that trying to bet race winners and turn a profit on a year-over-year basis is very difficult to do. I think that certainly, you can make a great case for Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Keselowski. You can even imagine Denny Hamlin coming from the back to potentially get a win. I just like to go a little bit deeper here because I don't feel that any of those drivers genuinely offer value at their given odds. So that's why I go quite a ways down the board and look at Ryan Blaney at 30-1.
Because, again, as it changed, now, had I made a wager earlier when the odds were different, I would have been looking a lot better in terms of my head-to-head matchup. But now if I go up to the window right now, those even odds that they've been bet to and after qualifying have looked at, minus 110, I'm going to have to throw out $110 to get $1 back.
You are. And I just want to say something. I realize that today is the first day of the NFL, and betting the sports books are absolutely jam-packed. NASCAR really offers some value in comparison to other sports. And for the fickle bettor, shopping your NASCAR prices around is absolutely one of the most valuable weapons that you have at your disposal. Looking for a variance on a driver you like where you can find great odds that are greatly different, where in other sports you just don't see that. So while anybody who's betting football today, I invite you to sort of go ahead and open up your wagering portfolio and start to include NASCAR. And I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised by the value that is there on a week-to-week basis.
Now, the trends we've been seeing recently, Jeff, we've been seeing more and more states legalize sports wagering and ratify this. There's bills and houses all over the country, and we do expect it to be legal in all states before too long. We're talking about 20 right now, and also that's one thing that's trending in a very positive direction. Another thing that's trending in a very positive direction is the attendance at these races, and also the TV viewership has been steadily going up this year. With all that being taken into consideration, NASCAR going to Las Vegas, it seems like the timing is really good for the kickoff to the playoffs. That'll get a ton of attention. So what's the buzz going to be like in Vegas with all the sports books available there and the race in town?
Timing is very hot. We're seeing people start to look at the underdeveloped analytics that are available to the handicapper within NASCAR, and that's very attractive. This race next week, the South Point 400, will probably have the largest wagering handle of any race so far this season.
And that's going to tell us a lot, isn't it? It's going to tell us a lot about where we are with wagering on NASCAR and also where NASCAR is in terms of the wagering, because we do know that was one of the goals of the whole thing. NASCAR wants wagerers to come to NASCAR, and wagerers want NASCAR to come to wagering. It's a win-win situation for both sides of this.
It definitely is. And when you look at NASCAR, there is so many opportunities for the new handicapper who perhaps does bet football. Both sports typically run their attractions on Sundays. It's the same handicapping format, and that's why you can transition from one sport to the other with relative ease. So going forward, I think NASCAR really has more going for it than virtually any other sport out there that people are looking to bet.
Yeah, and are we expecting, Jeff, some more news coming out? You told me a little bit earlier today that things were pretty quiet on the legislative front, but we know there's a lot pending out there. We know there's some news coming our way in terms of other states, in terms of where it's going. We've heard North Carolina, South Carolina, all being very close to jumping in on this game, if you will.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I think where that's really going to show up is through mobile betting. So as these states become legalized for sports wagering, you're also seeing the development of their mobile apps where people can essentially bet from their home and not have to necessarily step foot into a brick and mortar sports book. It's also very attractive for the attending fan at a race to be able to bet from their seat on their phone.
Yeah, and also when you look at something like the Kentucky Derby, for years, that's what people have, many years, that's what people have done. They've gone up, walked up to a wagering window, and then gone in and seen their event.
Yeah, and there's nothing like it. It's tremendously exciting. And with NASCAR, your bet is not over until the checkered flag flies. You know, in many other sports, we see a halftime where the wager's already been decided. That just doesn't occur in NASCAR all too often.
So the engines have fired on the famed Brickyard at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the last race of the regular season. There are basically 4 drivers going for 1 spot left. So when that green flag waves, you might say all bets are off then because that's the last time you can wager. Kyle Busch is your odds-on favorite to win the race. There are a lot of really intriguing matchups, but what's really going to be intriguing is throughout the course of this race to watch how these bubble drivers go forward and fall backwards. You can hear the race on the radio. You can also see it on TV on NBC. They'll be covering this for you, telling you what the drivers that are on that bubble will be doing throughout the race, who is in and who is out. And, of course, at the very end, we'll really find out who is the big winner. 5 minutes, 40 seconds to that green flag up in Indy. Again, it's been moved up because of a little pending weather in the area. Hopefully that stays away. For Jeff Hammond, Jeff Coyandro, Steve Makinen, and everybody involved in the Racers Odds, I'm John Roberts saying thanks for coming along for the ride. It's going to be a very exciting weekend, so take into consideration the information we gave you here. Go out and make your best bet. Sit back, enjoy the race, everybody, and we'll see you next weekend.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of TRN, the Performance Racing Network.